Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are unpacking an absolutely epic, high-stakes narrative of survival, unimaginable physical power, and ultimately, some truly incredible emotional restraint. We're going to examine a legendary source text that literally thrusts us right into the middle of a desperate, pitch-black flight through a terrifying wilderness. So grab a seat and let's dive into this to see how a story of ancient exile actually has so much to teach us about the burdens we carry and the true nature of strength.
I want you to really put yourself in this totally impossible scenario for a second. Imagine escaping a fiery death, like an actual assassination attempt by arson, only to find that your one and only path to safety means literally carrying your entire family on your back into an absolute nightmare. You've got zero supplies, there is no safe haven anywhere in sight, and your enemies are right on your heels. So what happens next? Well, that visceral, heart-pounding survival story is exactly what we're about to explore.
But just to set the stage real quick so we fully grasp the sheer weight of what's happening, we need to know exactly who is running and who they're running from. Our protagonists here are the Pandavas. That's 5 virtuous brothers and their mother. They have just barely survived a deadly trap set by their own relatives, the Kauravas, the hostile sons of Dhritarashtra. So the Pandavas are now exiles, fleeing completely in disguise simply because the Kauravas want them dead. The family dynamics at play here are toxic, they are deadly, and they're driving every single moment of the action we're about to see.
All right, that brings us right to Section 1, the terrifying forest flight.
Now we are going to track the second eldest Pandava brother. His name is Bhima. And he literally scoops up his exhausted family, puts them on his shoulders, and just sprints into the unknown. The source material describes his raw physical power with this absolutely brilliant comparison. It says he passeth through the woods, breaking down mighty trees, the leader of a herd of elephants, of the age of 60 years, angry. I mean, just think about that visual for a second. A massive, mature bull elephant in a state of complete fury, just flattening trees and creepers under its sheer weight. That is Bhima. The crash of his chest against the trees makes the entire forest tremble. He's not just walking, he's acting as a human battering ram to carve out a path to safety.
And, this wonderfully illustrates not just his brute strength, but his insane velocity. The text actually elevates Bhima from just a really powerful guy to a literal force of nature. It compares his speed to Garuda, the mythical giant eagle, and Marut, the god of wind. He is moving so unbelievably fast, swimming across really tough streams and just rushing through the thick brush, that his own family, who are clinging to his back and shoulders, actually start to faint. The very speed required to save their lives is almost too much for their human bodies to handle.
But let's take a step back and look at what Bhima is actually running into, because it is definitely not a peaceful sanctuary. The environment is a total nightmare. Food and water, practically non-existent. As evening approaches, the forest starts echoing with these terrifying cries of wild birds and beasts. Complete darkness shrouds everything, and then these untimely, violent winds begin to literally blow down trees around them. So the crucial takeaway here is that despite his godlike strength and speed, Bhima is fighting a massive uphill battle against a profoundly hostile, draining world that's actively trying to break his family down.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, the thirst of a queen.
You see, that mythic adrenaline rush? It eventually runs out, and the stark, fragile reality of human biology takes over. The family just completely collapses from sheer fatigue and thirst. They can't take a single step more. And then Kunti, the mother, utters this truly devastating plea. She says, "I am the mother of the 5 Pandavas and am now in their midst, yet I am burning with thirst." Think about that. She is surrounded by 5 of the greatest warriors on the face of the earth, and yet they are all completely powerless against basic human dehydration. This incredibly vulnerable moment immediately pierces Bhima's heart. It just completely grounds the story.
Hearing this plea immediately shifts Bhima from this angry, charging elephant into an intensely compassionate caretaker. He doesn't panic. First off, he gets his family safely settled under a large banyan tree. Second, using his super keen senses, he listens closely for the sweet cries of aquatic birds so he can pinpoint exactly where the water is. Third, he finds a lake, bathes, and drinks. But it's this 4th step that is the most telling detail of all. Because he doesn't have any cups or vessels, he resourcefully soaks his own upper garments in the lake and then hurriedly runs back 4 miles just so he can squeeze the water right into the mouths of his dehydrated family. The contrast between his violent, tree-smashing strength just moments ago and this gentle, tender act of devotion, it's just staggering.
Now we turn to Section 3, Fallen Royalty and Grief.
So Bhima gets back with the water, right? And he finds his mother and brothers fast asleep in the dirt, just completely dead to the world. And seeing this triggers a profound emotional breakdown for him. He starts to weep, sighing heavily like a snake, as he compares their former royal life to the destitute reality they're in right now. I mean, not that long ago, back in the city of Varanavada, this family was sleeping on the softest, most costly beds inside grand palaces. And now, they are smeared with dirt, smitten with thirst, and sleeping on the bare ground. Placing these two realities side by side really highlights the sheer drop in their status. It absolutely anchors the tragedy of this moment for Bhima.
And Bhima processes this grief very systematically. He looks at each family member, one by one, basically tallying up their divine worth against the terrible indignity of sleeping in the dirt. He looks at Kunti, the delicate daughter of kings, resplendent as a lotus, now just fatigued on the ground. He sees his eldest brother, the virtuous Yudhishthira, a man who literally deserves the sovereignty of the three worlds, sleeping like an ordinary guy. Arjuna, totally unequaled amongst men in battle, just lying there in the dust. And the twins, who are as beautiful as celestial beings, reduced to ordinary mortals. Bhima is just completely overwhelmed by the sheer injustice of it all.
And this feeling of overwhelming injustice leads Bhima to a super fascinating philosophical reflection. He says, "He who hath no jealous, evil-minded relatives liveth in happiness in this world like a single tree in a village." Bhima realizes that, a single tree in a village actually becomes sacred. People worship it, they venerate it, it lives in peace. Heck, even a forest of trees can thrive together if they actually support each other. But the Pandavas' peace has been completely obliterated because their own relatives, the Kauravas, are wicked and jealous. It's such a powerful metaphor for how toxic family dynamics can literally uproot your entire life.
And that bitter realization brings us to our final act, Section 4, Wrath Held in Check.
Because as Bhima stares at his sleeping, betrayed family, his deep sorrow very quickly ignites into an absolute, blazing fury. He starts mentally checking off the targets of his vengeance. First up, Duryodhana, the chief antagonist. Then, all of Duryodhana's children, his friends, his brothers. The great warrior Karna, the mastermind Sakuni. Bhima absolutely has the physical power to hunt them down right this second. He's thinking to himself, "Enjoy your temporary success, you wicked wretches." He is fully prepared and entirely capable of sending every single one of them straight to the regions of Yama, the god of death. The massive scale of his wrath is just palpable. He is a coiled spring ready to snap. But then he stops, literally dead in his tracks. And this is the crux of the entire explainer today. He says, "But what can I do? For, ye sinful wretches, the virtuous king Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandavas, is not yet angry with you." This is such an incredible turning point. All of Bhima's extreme violence, his godlike speed, his ability to smash down entire forests, it is all completely subordinated to his loyalty to his eldest brother. Because Yudhishthira is virtuous and hasn't given the command to attack, Bhima holds back the storm. His respect for order and his family hierarchy is actually stronger than his own towering rage.
So the scene comes to a quiet but incredibly tense close. He's squeezing his palms together in sheer frustration, sighing deeply, his anger blazing up suddenly like an extinguished fire catching the wind. But Bhima makes a choice. Instead of running back to become an unstoppable destroyer, he chooses to be a silent protector. He reasons that, hey, there might be a town nearby, and when his family finally wakes up, the water he brought will refresh them. So he just sits down in the dirt, wide awake, entirely alone, and keeps watch over them in the dark.
Which brings us to our final thought. So here's the big question to leave you with. What actually requires more strength? Destroying your enemies or waiting for the right time? Bhima definitely showed us unbelievable physical strength by carrying his family through an unforgiving forest. But his true power, the heaviest burden of the strong, was having the capacity for total destruction and choosing to sit in the dark and wait instead. It's a profound lesson in restraint that leaves us with a lot to think about. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it sparked your curiosity just as much as it did mine. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you on the next one.